Do you remember those old TV ads from the 1970s that somehow saw the world coming decades before it arrived? You probably didn't think much of them back then, just flashes of color between your favorite shows. But now, when you look back, they feel almost eerie, don't they? Like little time capsules whispering about a world that didn't yet exist. A world that looks a lot like today. These weren't just ads, they were accidental prophecies, moments of creative instinct that hinted at smartphones, streaming, smart homes, and social media long before we had the words for them. So tonight, let's step back into that flickering glow of the TV set when the picture wasn't high definition, but the dreams sure were. Let's revisit 25 old commercials that somehow, against all odds, predicted the future. The first one that always comes to mind is the AT&T Reach Out and Touch Someone campaign from 1979.
When the people you love come through loud and clear, I love you too. That's AT&T.
You remember it, those soft, sentimental voices, the emotional piano music, the close-ups of people making long-distance calls. It wasn't about the phone, it was about connection. You could almost feel that moment when the rotary dial clicked, the line buzzed, and someone's voice, miles away, suddenly filled your ear. Back then, it felt magical to make a long-distance call. You had to plan it, sometimes even ask the operator to connect you. But the message, reach out and touch someone, was quietly futuristic. Because what they were really talking about wasn't a phone call at all. It was digital intimacy, instant connection across distance. Sound familiar? Today, that's FaceTime. It's texting. It's 1,000 tiny ways you reach out and touch someone without leaving your couch. Then there was the Xerox paperless office commercial from 1975.
The Xerox 4500 saves me paper, filing space, mailing costs time, and money.
The ad opens with a confident narrator proclaiming, "One day soon you won't need all this paper." You can almost hear the whir of the copier in the background, the smell of warm toner, the rhythm of the machine feeding one sheet after another. Xerox employees walk through pristine white offices holding floppy disks and grinning about a digital future. Back then, it was hard to imagine an office without filing cabinets stacked to the ceiling. But Xerox was right, they were describing the cloud before the cloud existed. Of course, irony followed. Xerox, the company that predicted the digital workspace, missed the personal computer revolution it helped invent. But that's the beauty of hindsight. You can see how close they came. That ad wasn't selling a copier. It was quietly announcing the dawn of a new world where ideas lived in data, not paper. Another one that still gives me chills was Polaroid's Now campaign from 1977. You can still picture it, the bright saturated colors, the click whir of the instant camera, the glossy white frame developing right before your eyes. That sound was magic, wasn't it? It was the sound of time freezing. Polaroid promised instant gratification before social media ever existed. Capture the moment, share it now. The phrasing sounds suspiciously like Instagram's early tagline. Back then, that ad was about family photos at picnics, about holding a memory in your hands seconds after it happened. But really, it was about what we all crave today, the ability to show the world what we're experiencing right now. We traded that chemical smell of film developing for blue light on glass screens, but the impulse never changed. Do you miss that pause? The few seconds before the picture appeared, when anticipation itself was part of the magic. And then there was General Motors' Futurama 2 ad campaign from 1970. If you were around, you remember the tone, grand, almost cinematic. GM unveiled it during the World's Fair years earlier, but the commercial was pure space-age optimism. Wide highways curving through futuristic cities, cars gliding without drivers, families looking out panoramic windshields as soft-voiced narrators promised a world of tomorrow. Back then, it felt like science fiction. A car that could drive itself? Impossible. And yet here we are. Electric vehicles, autonomous navigation, heads-up displays, it's all there. The ad even showed a woman sitting in the front seat reading while the car handled the road. It wasn't just a dream, it was a prediction of the Tesla age. 50 years early, the 1970s were an era of technological wonder and quiet anxiety, when progress felt both thrilling and a little bit dangerous. GM's commercial captured that duality perfectly. When you think about it now, doesn't it feel like we're living inside that commercial? By now you can see the rhythm of it. Those ads weren't just selling products, they were selling the future, and somehow that future turned out to be the world you wake up in every morning. Let's keep going. The next ones get stranger, more uncanny. You'll see how even the jingles, the fonts, the lighting, they all hinted at tomorrow in ways nobody noticed back then. You might even start to wonder, were these ads predicting the future or shaping it? You remember Panasonic's Take the World With You ad from 1976, don't you? It showed a young man walking through a city at night with a small cassette player clipped to his belt, headphones pressed tight over his ears. He's nodding along to his favorite tune, oblivious to the noise around him. Back then, that image looked almost absurd. People didn't walk around listening to private soundtracks. Music was public. Car radios, jukeboxes, record players in living rooms. But Panasonic knew something we didn't. The idea of personalized sound, music that moved with you, was the first whisper of the digital streaming era. You can almost feel it, can't you? The soft pressure of those foam headphones, the click of the play button, the steady hum as the tape rolled. That commercial wasn't just about a cassette player, it was about freedom. The same kind of freedom you feel now when you pop in your earbuds and disappear into your your own world. Spotify, Apple Music, they're just the children of that idea. When was the last time you really listened to a song all the way through without skipping or multitasking, just you and the sound? Then came IBM's Machine That Thinks campaign in 1977. You probably saw it late at night, glowing blue screens, men in thick glasses, reels of tape spinning like the inside of a spaceship. The narrator, deep and assured, said something that stuck. One day machines will not just compute, they will understand. Back then, understanding computers sounded like fantasy. You typed commands, they obeyed, that was it. But IBM was flirting with an idea that would take decades to bloom: artificial intelligence. The imagery was hauntingly prophetic. Hands typing, lights blinking, a voice calmly saying, "Fahiram, the future of thinking is here." You can almost hear the clatter of those old key punch machines, smell the ozone from the hardware warming up. And now, here you are, talking to your phone, your car, even your home assistant. IBM didn't just sell mainframes. They sold a glimpse of consciousness inside the circuit. Do you remember the first time you realized your computer could talk back? Next up was Kodak's Moments in Time campaign from 1974. The voiceover said, "Someday you'll be able to share your memories instantly." It sounded impossible. Cameras required patience, film rolls, dark rooms, waiting days to see your photos. But Kodak's commercial showed a family projecting their photos on a living room wall with just one click. The visuals were warm, orange tinted, soaked in 1970s color grading. The smell of slide film, the hum of a projector wheel turning, the faint flicker of light across smiling faces. It felt magical. And here's the thing, Kodak's engineers were already experimenting with digital imaging. They filmed that commercial without realizing they were prophesying social media feeds. You think about it now, how every meal, sunset, and pet photo gets shared instantly, and you realize Kodak was telling the truth. They just didn't know how big that truth would become. Do you still print photos, or have your memories all gone digital too? And then there was Honeywell's Smart Home of Tomorrow ad from 1978. You can still picture it: sleek beige appliances, chrome panels, and that soft futuristic hum every home of the future ad had. A narrator said, "Imagine a home that thinks for you, controls your lights, your temperature, even your coffee." At the time, it felt like pure sci-fi. No one could imagine talking to their home. But Honeywell's engineers were experimenting with early programmable thermostats and remote automation systems, the ancestors of Alexa, Nest, and smart lighting. The ad showed a woman waking up, stretching, and saying, "Good morning," as her coffee brewed automatically. It was a little cheesy then, but now, it's reality. Smart homes, voice control, climate automation. It all started with that dreamy vision. You can almost hear the soft beep of the old Honeywell thermostat, the click of the heater kicking in. What would that 1970s family think if they could see your smart speaker answering back today? One of the strangest of them all was Magnavox's You Are There campaign in 1978. The ad featured families sitting around a big wood-paneled TV console, watching what looked like interactive programming. People voting on shows, selecting camera angles, even chatting on screen. The narrator said, "Someday, television will let you take part." Back then, it sounded impossible. The very idea that a TV could listen, respond, or change what you saw was the stuff of science fiction. But if you look at it now, that was the birth of interactive media, the seeds of YouTube, Twitch, and live streaming culture. The glow of that Magnavox console filled the whole room. You could hear the faint buzz of the tube, feel the heat radiating off the screen. The ad showed a boy turning to his dad and saying, "Can we see it from another angle?" It was a metaphor for a whole generation that didn't just want to watch, they wanted to participate. There was another one people rarely talk about now, but it's burned into the memory of anyone who saw it. Seiko's The Wrist Computer ad from 1979. A close-up shot of a stainless steel digital watch fills the screen. The music is crisp and futuristic, all synth and shimmer. The narrator says, "The power of a computer, now on your wrist." You remember how it felt to see that, like the future was suddenly wearable. Seiko's digital watches were marvels then, with tiny calculators, stopwatches, even calendar functions. But that line, "the power of a computer," was pure prophecy. They had no idea they were describing the Apple Watch, fitness trackers, biometric sensors, and everything that came after. You could almost feel that cool metal strap on your wrist, the satisfying click of the buttons. Back then, it was a gadget. Now, it's an extension of your body. And finally, for this stretch, there was Pepsi's The Choice of a New Generation ad from 1977. You can probably hum the jingle even now. It wasn't just about soda, it was about rebellion, youth, energy. The ad featured roller skaters, disco lights, and this almost electric optimism about being young and plugged in to what's next. But look closely and you'll see it predicted more than pop culture. It hinted at branding as identity. Pepsi wasn't selling a drink anymore, it was selling belonging. You weren't just buying cola, you were joining a tribe, expressing who you were. That's what every social platform, influencer brand, and lifestyle product does today. It all started with that idea, identity as commerce. Pepsi made it cool to say, "I'm part of this." You can still hear the fizz of a can opening, the pop of carbonation, the echo of roller disco laughter. It's funny, isn't it? These weren't documentaries or predictions. They were sales pitches. But hidden inside all that optimism and product polish were ideas that that became your everyday reality. The 1970s imagined the world we live in, one ad break at a time, and we're only halfway there. The next wave of commercials didn't just predict gadgets or lifestyles, they foresaw entire cultures. Digital communities, online shopping, artificial empathy, the kind of future you can feel but can't quite touch. Let's step deeper into that world next. By the late 1970s, the world on TV felt electric, buzzing with the sense that something new was humming just beyond the static. You could feel it even if you didn't understand it yet. The commercials stopped just selling things and started selling ideas. And if you look back now, you'll realize they were sketching the blueprint of our digital lives long before we lived them. You remember Apple's Computer for the Rest of Us ad from 1979, don't you? A young Steve Jobs and his team had launched the Apple II a couple of years earlier, and their ads were unlike anything else. Gone were the cold corporate tones of IBM. Instead, you saw smiling students, curious kids, even parents using the computer like it was a member of the family. The tagline said, "You don't have to be a genius to use one." That ad was revolutionary because it reframed what a computer was. It wasn't a machine, it was a companion. You can still picture that beige box on the desk, the gentle hum of the fan, the flicker of green letters on a black screen. You could feel the future in that glow. It was the birth of accessibility, the idea that technology could belong to everyone, not just engineers. That ad didn't just predict the personal computer, it predicted the personal relationship we'd form with technology itself. Then came United Airlines' Fly the Friendly Skies campaign, which ran heavily through the decade. You might think, airline ads predicting the future? But think about it. Those commercials weren't just about flying, they were about connection. They showed businessmen making phone calls mid-air, families reuniting across continents, the world feeling smaller. There was one ad in particular around 1977 showing a woman sending a message from the plane to her family waiting at home. The voiceover said, "One day, distance won't feel like distance at all." You could hear the rustle of the stewardess's uniform, the clink of ice in tiny cups, the soft hiss of cabin air. And there it was, the first whisper of the connected world. United wasn't selling travel. They were selling a vision of instant global communication, email, messaging, video calls. You probably remember Radio Shack's Our Future is Electronic campaign around 1978. The store shelves in those ads looked like something between a toy aisle and a laboratory. Rows of blinking circuit boards, pocket calculators, CB radios, early digital watches. The tagline was almost laughably bold. Someday, everything will be electronic. It's easy to forget now, but Radio Shack was once the frontier of consumer tech. The ad Zerwerner ad showed a father and son soldering something together on a kitchen table, the smell of hot metal and flux in the air. The kid says, "What else will be electronic?" And the narrator answers, "Everything." They were right. From cars to toothbrushes to books to love letters, it all became data, current, and circuitry. When was the last time you held something in your hands that wasn't electronic? And then there was Bell Systems' Picture Phone ad, first aired in 1970 but heavily rerun throughout the decade. If you were lucky enough to see it, you probably remember the surreal image, two people smiling at each other through small grainy screens built into rotary telephones. The picture phone, the narrator said, lets you see who you're talking to anywhere in the world. The voice was warm and proud, full of 1970s optimism. But at the time, it seemed impossible, too futuristic, too expensive, too unnecessary. Most people laughed it off. But that ad predicted the core of modern life: video calls, FaceTime, Zoom. You can still picture it. The way the ad framed faces, the faint static lines, the charming awkwardness of people waving at a screen. It's the same impulse we have now, just with sharper pixels. When you video chat today, do you ever stop to think, you're living inside the dream Bell sold 50 years ago? Another eerie one was Bank of America's The Card That Does It All campaign from 1976. A hand slid a plastic card across a counter while a calm voice said, "One day, you'll use this instead of cash." The visuals were crisp, clinical, showing data centers full of blinking lights. Most people didn't believe it. How could a piece of plastic replace money? But that ad wasn't about credit cards. It was about digital currency. The early data networks behind those cards would become the backbone of online banking, e-commerce, and even cryptocurrency. The language, money without the middleman, was almost prophetic. You could hear the satisfying ka-chunk of a manual card swiper, the slip of carbon paper being pulled away. That sound was the first echo of Apple Pay. When was the last time you actually held cash in your hand and felt the texture of it? Then there was Sears' Teleshop campaign. Yes, Sears, the department store giant. In 1978, they ran a quiet series of ads about a home terminal that let customers order products directly from the catalog, using their phone line. The footage was grainy, but you can imagine it. A woman sitting at a wood-paneled desk, dialing into a network, scrolling through a digital catalog. The announcer said, "Soon, shopping from home won't just be convenient, it'll be common." They were describing online shopping before the internet had a name. Amazon, eBay, Etsy, all of it hiding in a Sears ad from the Carter administration. You can almost hear the phone line buzzing, the static of dial-up decades early. What do you think that woman would say if she saw you getting same-day delivery from your phone today? Another ahead of its timepiece was Hewlett-Packard's The Personal Connection ad in 1977. It wasn't flashy, just quiet footage of people using small desktop machines to send messages, process data, even draw images. The narrator said, "In the future, information will move as easily as thought." The ad was about computing, but the idea went deeper. It foresaw the internet of emotion. Data as empathy, the early sense that technology could transmit not just facts, but feelings. Today we live in that reality. Tweets, emojis, DMs, digital confessions. You can still imagine the sound of those old dot matrix printers, the soft beeps of a modem connecting. Do you think information still moves as easily as thought, or have we made it heavier somehow? And then there was Coca-Cola's "I'd like to teach the world to sing" ad, first aired in 1971. It's one of the most famous ads ever made. Hundreds of young people standing on a hilltop, holding glass bottles, singing in harmony. It looked innocent enough, but at its heart, it was predicting global connectivity. The idea that shared media could unite people across cultures. That ad wasn't just selling soda, it was selling togetherness through technology. It foreshadowed the cultural internet, viral media, the way a single video today can ripple across billions of screens. The sound of their voices, the sunlight on their faces, it felt like an early version of the global feed. When you scroll through your phone now and see people from every corner of the world, do you ever think it started with that song? By the end of the decade, even news networks had caught the fever. CBS ran a campaign in 1979 titled "The World Right Now." You might remember the tagline, "Instant information anywhere." They were talking about satellite news feeds, but what they were describing was Twitter, real-time global updates, the sound of teletype machines, the glow of newsroom clocks showing every time zone. It all felt so alive, so immediate. For the first time, you could watch the world unfold as it happened. It was intoxicating and a little terrifying. You can still hear that newsroom rhythm, the staccato click of typewriters, the murmur of anchors rehearsing lines, the buzz of a live broadcast counting down. The 1970s were a decade of curiosity, of cautious optimism wrapped in static and jingle. Every ad, in its own way, told you, the future's coming and it's friendly, but it also taught you something deeper. That technology isn't just about convenience, it's about emotion, identity, and belonging. By the end of the 1970s, the commercials had taken on an almost mythic quality. They weren't just about what you could buy, they were about what you could become. One of the most quietly prophetic was Tandy's microcommunicator commercial from 1979. It showed a young woman in her apartment typing messages to friends on a monochrome terminal. The narrator's voice floated in. Soon, everyone will be connected, from home, from school, from anywhere. You can almost hear the sound of that early keyboard, crisp, deliberate clicks. You can picture her hair under the soft lamp glow, the faint hum of the modem. What they were describing, without realizing it, was social media. Decades before MySpace, Facebook, or messaging apps existed, it wasn't about typing words. It was about belonging somewhere, even when you were alone. The ad ended with her smiling at the screen, that universal look of recognition, the same one you give your phone when someone texts you, "I was just thinking about you." Then came Sony's The Vision of Sound ad, also from 1979, a bold, futuristic campaign for their new line of high-fidelity stereos. But the commercial went further, it promised immersion. The narrator said, "Soon you won't just hear music, you'll feel inside it." It showed a man closing his eyes as speakers surrounded him, sound swirling like a physical presence. The bass thumped through his chest. You could almost feel it, even through your old TV speakers. At the time, it was a poetic exaggeration, but now, that's virtual reality, surround sound. 3D audio, total immersion. Sony's ad tapped into the human desire to enter experiences, not just watch or listen, but inhabit. Today, that dream lives on in headsets and haptics, suits, in digital concerts that make millions feel like they're standing in the same room. And then there was Commodore's The Age of Information campaign in 1978. This one was hauntingly on the nose. It showed children in classrooms using personal computers to learn, while a calm voice said, "The world's knowledge, right at your fingertips." You could almost smell the chalk dust. Hear the rattle of pencils on wooden desks. Back then, the computer on screen looked bulky and clumsy, but the ad's vision was pure magic, a future where anyone, anywhere, could learn anything. They weren't talking about data, they were talking about democratization. the internet before the internet, YouTube tutorials, Wikipedia, open source education, all foreshadowed in a 1-minute ad for a beige box with floppy disks. Another forgotten gem was RCA's Tomorrow's Television ad from 1976. It was all gleaming chrome and glowing grids, with the narrator saying, "Someday, your television will know what you want to watch, before you do." That line hits differently now, doesn't it? In the ad, families laughed as the TV of the future suggested their favorite shows, adjusting channels automatically. It was a whimsical idea, meant to sell new color TV models, but it was also a perfect forecast of algorithms, AI recommendations, and curated feeds. That idea, that a machine could know your taste, changed everything. It's what defines the modern age of content, but in the 1970s it was framed as a miracle of convenience, not yet the quiet psychological mirror it would become. You can still hear the sound of that mechanical dial clicking through channels. Then there was Digital Equipment Corporation's The Talking Machine ad from 1978. It opened on a small boxy computer connected to a microphone. A scientist asks, "What's the weather?" and the computer replies in a stilted synthetic voice. The narrator said, "Soon, your computer will talk to you, and you'll talk back." You can almost hear that robotic voice, flat and tinny, bouncing through analog speakers. It felt like a parlor trick at the time. But that moment, a computer answering a human, was the beginning of conversational AI. 50 years later, we take it for granted. Hey Siri, hey Google. But back then, it was a miracle. And what they didn't know is that one day, those voices wouldn't just answer questions. They'd understand tone, humor, even sadness. When you talk to your devices now, do you ever wonder if they understand you better than people do? One of the most fascinating time capsules came from Xerox again. The Thinking Assistant, 1979. It showed an office worker feeding documents into a copier that automatically organized and analyzed the text. The narrator said, "It doesn't just copy your work, it helps you think." In hindsight, it's hard not to see that as the birth of machine learning. The ad's visual language, glowing data streams, automated summaries, was eerily close to how we visualize AI today. The concept of a thinking assistant is now a part of everyday life, but the tone of that ad was calm, even comforting, a promise, not a warning. The air in that office was sterile and humming. The machines clicked rhythmically like a lullaby for progress. When you ask a digital assistant to write, to plan, to decide, do you ever think about the day we stopped being the only thinkers in the room? And then, maybe the strangest of them all, British Telecom's The Information Age advert from 1979. A swirl of neon lights, a soft synth score, a deep voice saying, "We are building a network of minds, a web that connects every corner of the earth." The imagery was abstract then. Glowing lines across maps, silhouettes of people sharing data. But the phrasing, "a web that connects minds," was astonishingly literal. They were describing the internet years before Tim Berners-Lee even coined the term World Wide Web. It's almost chilling to hear it now. The hum of analog synths, the futuristic typography, the earnest belief that connection would make us wiser. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but they saw it coming. When was the last time you felt like the web connected minds, instead of dividing them? And finally, there was one ad that feels like the quiet closing of that decade's prophecy. Bell Labs' Reach Tomorrow from 1979. No product, no price, just a simple poetic message. The future isn't something that happens, it's something we build. One idea at a time. The visuals were breathtaking for the era. Slow pans of city lights, satellites orbiting, people typing, hugging, dreaming. It was sentimental, sure, but the sentiment was right. Every small invention, every commercial promise, every moment of imagination was building towards something enormous. And that's what those ads really were. Not predictions, but blueprints of belief. They taught us to expect more, to believe in progress, to trust that tomorrow would arrive with open arms. So when you look back at those 25 commercials, all that warm color, those analog sounds, the grain of film that made everything glow like memory, you realize they weren't selling soda or stereos or credit cards. They were selling hope. They made you believe the future would be bright, connected, human. And for a while, it was. Maybe it still is, if you know where to look. Maybe nostalgia isn't about going back at all. Maybe it's about recognizing the echoes, the ways the past still lives inside the present. Every time you tap a screen, send a message, or call someone you love across the miles, you're living inside those old commercials. The ads ended, but the dream didn't. It just changed its resolution. So here's a thought. What would the ads of today look like 50 years from now? Would someone watch them and say, they saw it coming? If you remember even one of the commercials we talked about tonight, or if it made you feel that quiet spark of recognition, I'd love to hear which one it was. Leave a comment, hit like, subscribe. Not because the algorithm says so, but because somewhere out there, someone else remembers too. And maybe that's the real connection those 1970s dreamers were talking about all along.